welcome to DallasWeekly.com. I am staff writer Katrina Satterwhite, and today we're going to be interviewing Elroy Johnson from the Oak Cliff documentary. He is the photojournalist for this awesome documentary. Welcome, Elroy. How are you today?
Good, thank you. And please feel free to call me EJ. Most folks call
Okay, EJ, I'm sorry.
me. No, you're good.
All right, awesome, EJ. Welcome. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Give us a little background of how this all started for you, this documentary for Oak Cliff.
Yeah, so the Oak Cliff documentary is actually it's an ongoing project, so it's not necessarily like one film. There are films that we have worked on, but it's an ongoing project that really started as a black and white photo series documenting the life and the culture, the people, and everything that really relates to Oak Cliff in particularly. So growing up, I've lived in a few different places in terms of different states and cities, but the one place that always felt the most consistent, or that was most consistent, was Oak Cliff. And so my parents are both born and raised in Oak Cliff, were born in Dallas and raised in Oak Cliff. And so, yeah, so most weekends, a lot of summers are all in Oak Cliff with the grandparents and family members. So that was really kind of what formed a lot of my early memories growing up. And so when I kind of got into photography about 5-6 years ago, I knew when I was living in Louisiana, I got into photography there. And I wanted to do some sort of ongoing long-term project that was going to document something. And so I was like, what can I document? And so it really dawned on you, document what you know. And what I knew was Oak Cliff. And so literally that was like me taking my cameras, going to friends' birthday parties saying, yo, can I take photos at your birthday party of you, your family? And dad, take photos of my grandmother in the kitchen cooking, take photos of like church anniversary services, cultural events, anything that was like really happening in Oak Cliff. Like I was like kind of just show up with the camera and document it, and really also wanting to be sure that particularly people of color, like Black communities, like our stories and our lives are documented. And so I wanted that to also be a part of local history in Dallas. And so that's kind of how it got started. And we put out most of the stuff on social media. And so from there, it's kind of grown. And now I'm doing filmmaking to continue that storytelling process.
That is so awesome. It's very intriguing. So when did you actually start documenting everything?
So I say, I think I would say unofficially 2015, officially 2016. Unofficially, like I was taking photos and doing stories like walking up and down Jefferson Boulevard, stopping people, asking, can I take your photo and interview them. And then I think in spring of 2016, I think when I actually got the Oak Cliff documentary, like social media together and started putting it out more officially that way. So 2015/2016.
Okay. And you said it was like an ongoing project. You said you had several films within this documentary.
So it is an ongoing project. So we have about a little over a year ago, I got a grant from the City of Dallas Office of Arts and Culture. And so
Oh,
the Building the Bridge film. And so that film looked at the lack of STEM access or STEAM access for youth of color in the city of Dallas. And so with that, we kind of get to follow 3 Black teenagers and have a conversation with them as they're hoping to really go into these STEAM careers. And they have an honest conversation about what it's like to be Black in this field, looking at issues of race, educational equity, talking to community organizers and organizations that are actually doing the work to make sure that kids have access to these type of programs and educators as well. And so that film is currently on the film circuit. So we're excited as folks are getting to see that film, have a bigger conversation around educational equity. And so so that's happening. And then currently right now I'm in production or the producing stage for a food justice story. And with that, we're looking at the disparities communities of color have, particularly areas in South Oak Cliff and West Dallas, to fresh produce. And so we were able to thankfully get a grant again from the City of Dallas Office of Arts and Culture to do that film. And in that film, we really focused in on the Oak Cliff Veggie Project, the work they're doing and other individuals in the community. So
that's so amazing. So it is a community effort. It sounds like it's
absolutely.
not just you doing this. I'm sure you have many people around you that are helping put this together.
Absolutely, yes. So I do directing and producing, but I have an amazing for Building the Bridge. Chris Clark was our amazing director of photography, who did that. Tej Patel is the director of photography on the Food Justice Story that's coming out next month in February. And then a lot of the folks in the film, a lot of these folks are organizations and people from Oak Cliff, from Dallas that are doing the work. And so really, I just see my role is documenting the work that they're already doing and trying to address these social issues that we have in our communities.
Okay, so if someone was just moving to Dallas, 'cause I'm not originally from Dallas myself, so
Oh, okay.
you
Where
know,
are you from?
I'm not far from East Texas, not too far.
Okay, I have roots in East Texas. All
Oh
right.
wow, it's awesome. So I know about Dallas obviously before I moved here, but I didn't know too much about Oak Cliff. So if someone was moving here and they didn't know much about it, how would you describe the culture of Oak Cliff?
I think about it, my smile. That's why when I hear Oak Cliff, I get excited. Like Oak Cliff is like, I mean, when I have friends, anybody that's not from Dallas visit Dallas, like I'm like, all right, cool, we're going to Oak Cliff. Like we going on my side. So that's the first place I'm taking folks to. Like, I mean, it truly is like the cultural hub of the city. Like I think a lot of when we think of like culture that comes out of Dallas, like so much of that has come out of the Oak Cliff neighborhood, whether we're talking about actual individuals and artists and athletes, but then a lot of history, and particularly one thing I'm really interested in is like looking at the Black history here in Dallas. And there's a long-standing history with that here in Dallas, with Black history in the neighborhood of Oak Cliff. You think of Freedmanstown in the 10th Street area, but then also you had so many families like my own family. My grandmother's one of the first African-American families that moved on her street. And so kind of experiencing that and through white.
Oh, wow.
But Oak Cliff has such a strong standing history and culture, especially for the Black and Latinx experience in the city. So I tell folks like, look, you're trying to get something good to eat. You're trying to see Dallas culture. You need to head to Oak Cliff, and obviously, you know, it's a really big neighborhood. I don't think folks often think about that. Like, Oak Cliff is geographically. I believe it's a third of the city, a third of Dallas. Like it's a huge area. And so within that, there's so many neighborhoods and things to experience. Like, you know, there'll be many days where I won't actually ever really leave outside of the Oak Cliff area, you know, so.
That's funny that you say that, because some people that I know that are from the Oak Cliff area, they don't really leave that area either too much. So
yeah, we are very, Oak Cliff folk know, like Oak Cliff is Oak Cliff. Like, like a lot of I have it right here in Oak Cliff. Like, so you know, it has, like I say, it has such a rich history, and a deep history at the same time. Like, you know, Oak Cliff was not always a part of Dallas. Like it was annexed into the city of Dallas, and so I think that might be part of the reason why there's such a like identifiable pride that's here in Oak Cliff, and so it's been that way for a minute. But yes, Oak Cliff is it's a dope place.
oh, I totally agree. I mean, once I learned about everything, I absolutely love it. I love that for going for food, especially. Love it.
Exactly. Look, I'll be telling folks, you know. So I mean, shout out to all the neighborhoods in Dallas. But yeah, we got some dope spots right here in the
Absolutely. So, what was the first thing that you documented ever for this project?
For this project, I think the first couple of images and stories, I talked to a couple of high school students that were walking home on Jefferson Boulevard. And then I went to interview their mother that worked at a hair salon on Jefferson Boulevard. Actually, not too long ago, I went to go see if it was, I don't even know if it's still there or not. And so they were like some of the first stories, but then also I'm an educator and I also have taught in Oak Cliff. I'm also doing interviews with some of the teachers I taught with in Oak Cliff and just kind of asking them questions like, why are you committed to teaching in Oak Cliff and to the students of this neighborhood in particular? So those are like some of the first interviews and stories. And so really community based for sure. And just documenting our lives, you know.
Awesome. And so, what is your overall goal for this project? Do you just want to bring light to Oak Cliff, or just show a different side of Oak Cliff?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely want to bring life to it because, you know, there's definitely, you know, whether you think of Oak Cliff, like Oak Cliff has had many years of the stereotypes of people hearing certain type of stories. And so really to show the humanity of it, because, you know, for me thinking of Oak Cliff, like Oak Cliff was family, right? So like, you know, I remember, you know, when I think of Oak Cliff, I think of family, I think of, you know, barbecues at my grandma's house, things that, you know, I had that we did growing up. And so I definitely want to continue to use it as a platform to bring that light and to document it, but then at the same time as a person that works in social studies, teaching education with history, I want to document our lives. I think it's so important that we have more of our stories documented, and so to be able to have that there as well. So those are some of the initial things. Hopefully, we would like to start mentoring youth more that want to get into photography and filmmaking. I think that's the next step to really make sure that we can bring up another generation of storytellers from the neighborhood.
Oh yes, I can definitely see that happening. That's you're off to a great start. It's 5 years in the 5 years, 6 almost 6 years now in the making. This is 2021.
Yeah, I know, right? I keep forgetting.
I know. So does your family support this? Do they help you with some of this, putting the word out about it and things like that?
They'll probably say, well, they let him take pictures. They let me take pictures of myself, like my grandmother. So yeah, they're very supportive of the the work and um,
Good.
I mean, like I said, they're from Oak Cliff. I mean, really, both side, mom and dad side, both families kind of moved in that 1960s time period. Like many Black families were moving in from rural areas and found home in Oak Cliff and raised families. So like a lot of folks are from Oak Cliff, so yeah, they're very supportive.
Okay, that's definitely needed. When anytime you're doing something huge like that, you definitely need
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
So this is you started off being you said you were a photographer before, and so how did you get from being a photographer to wanting to start documenting? Did you just are you just very social and you started hearing stories from people? Like how did that
Yeah.
all like start?
Well, I think initially I've always loved history. So that's like my favorite subject growing up. So I've always been interested in stories and people's stories. And so when I was living in Louisiana, I got into, like I said, photography just as like a leisure thing. And in Louisiana, it's like, I took a lot of photos initially of like the scenery, bayous, rivers, Mardi Gras, things like that. When I moved back to Dallas, I realized after kind of changing what I was going to be doing, because Dallas is different than South Louisiana. And so, in that, in particularly, I really, at that time period, started documenting social justice movements, right? So, Black Lives Matter protests. Those were some of the, I remember going out early, like, yo, I think I'm gonna go document this. Like, this is like history. This needs to be documented. Folks that they know about what's going on. So initially, I, would do that just for like my own social media, account to put out there. But then from that, I wanted to have like a deeper story of like really documenting our lives. And so that kind of, like I said, led way, I guess you could say, to the Oak Cliff documentary, where I think it's like a lot of things that folks experience in Oak Cliff or
Hmm.
people just in general, but I wanted to be like from the neighborhood, right? So like going to church, a church anniversary, like, a birthday party, my grandmother cooking in the kitchen,
Yes.
whether it is, different organizations that are really involved in doing the work in Oak Cliff, so just documenting people's lives. And what they're doing. And so, yeah, so like standing back and looking at it, it's like, this is Oak Cliff, this is what I know, and this is what I want to continue to show folks.
Oh God, I love that. I totally love that. So, do you go and just look for stories? Like, do you just like approach people to interview them or document them, or do they submit stories to you?
Yeah, actually now it's a little bit of all of it. So initially it was like, your close proximity. So it was like, hey, friends, grandmother, coworkers, everybody's story's gonna get told, right? So like, so if you go to the initial photos, like, those are all people like I know or I'm related to. But then after that, then folks would kind of reach out like, yo, I know you're doing this. Like, come over here. We're about to do this event. We're about to do this, community thing. Come take some photos over here. And so folks would just like be gracious enough to let me into their spaces. And so I was able to then start just kind of going in different places. So it's a combination of like reaching out to folks or people I know and folks telling me like, yo, come over here, bring your camera and see what we're doing.
The community effort again.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it really is. And I love you keep saying that because that's really what this is, right? Oak Cliff documentaries to show community, and Oak Cliff is a community and showing that and how it works. Like that's really what it is. So,
Okay. What's the most moving story that you've heard? Something that just really touched you or you're more passionate about?
um, I trying to think. Been a lot of stories, but I don't know like if one. I think it's just different stories hit differently.
Hmm.
We did a short little documentary called The Ladies Oak Cliff, and it was an interview with my grandmother and one of her really, really good friends. And so it was like really them telling their stories and how they got to Dallas. And so, coming from both of them, growing up, picking cotton, things of these type of stories, and where their family were farmers, and then coming to the city of Dallas, being some of the first African American families on their street, respective streets, and hearing the jobs and lives that a lot of Black women in Dallas did, particularly in that 1950s, 1960s. Just really hearing their story and their life, and looking at how much they've seen in the certain period of time, and how much my grandmother's seen as she's lived on her street in Oak Cliff, whether that is white flight and what that was like to move, when you move on the street, then all your neighbors left, and so then you have new neighbors. And so what was that like to working jobs that she didn't always necessarily want to do, but that might have been what she could do as a Black woman. And so so like those stories I think are really impactful. And outside of that, that's what I'm also doing a lot more of, is really trying to document stories from Black elders, because we have to document these stories. It is like crucial urgency. I've been on some calls earlier, other folks doing some similar work. And so that's definitely a passion. But I think anytime I get to sit and talk with our elders and hear their stories.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You probably just get it just from that. But
yeah, I do. Yeah.
in itself. Yeah.
They teach you so much. Without them, I mean, what would we be? We wouldn't have a lot of information. We wouldn't have any history or anything like that. What are the future plans for your documentary? Like, what do you ultimately want it? Where do you want it to go?
Yeah, so the Building the Bridge film, we want to continue to let it be shown in different spaces and have conversations with folks about educational equity. Hopefully, that's like the goal, to have more folks be able to see it. And same thing with the food justice story. So like I said, that comes out. We'll have a digital screening next month for that. And so we'll have a panel discussion as well with the folks in that film, and then be able to have a conversation around what food justice is, and how that's tied to racial justice, and have that conversation, and particularly look at folks like the organization, the Oak Cliff Veggie Project, what they're doing to address these concerns. And so really, I hope that these, whether it's the films or the photos, that they're talking pieces for that also, really motivates people to want to get involved in some capacity. And so I think that's like the ultimate goal.
I think that's a great goal to have. So if anybody wants to check it out, where would they find information about your documentary?
Yeah, so they want to check out the Oak Cliff documentary work in general. They can go to Instagram, Oak Cliff Documentary, or Facebook, Oak Cliff Documentary. You'll be able to see photos from like 5-6 years, that time period, and be able to see the photos, the interviews, as well as other videos. And so we are trying to get ready to send more information out. Right now, we've kind of been really focused on some of the films we're working on, but in terms of Building the Bridge film is showing next at the Denton Black Film Festival at the end of this month. And so folks can actually get tickets for online. It's a virtual film festival this year, and they can see that, but also follow the Oak Cliff documentary, because we'll be posting about the upcoming film, A Food Justice Story. You can sign up to see that film in February. So it is a free, we want everybody to come see it, enjoy, participate in the conversation, the panel discussion. The Oak Cliff documentary on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, I definitely will be checking that out. I love the concept, the idea. I love what you're doing for the community. So you definitely have our support. Anything else you want to shout out?
Just thank you. Thank Dallas Weekly, because like organizations like Dallas Weekly have been those organizations really paving the way for Black storytellers in the city. And so I'm always a respecter of that. And so thank you to Dallas Weekly, and really, like I said, paving the way for Black media and Black storytellers in the city. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an honor to talk to you and learn more about your project and your documentary. That's going to wrap up our interview, guys. Again, I'm staff writer Katrina Satterwhite. You can check out more interviews like these at dallasweekly.com. You can also check us out on social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and stay safe.